Hello, writer, and welcome back to my life. It's Writer Wednesday, the day where I give you my tips and advice on the art and the business of writing and tell you how I do what I do as an indie author. Today's question comes from patron Kristen Stevens, who asks, you talk about Save the Cat and how you use it in your outlining process. How exactly do you apply the Save the Cat story beats written by Blake Snyder to fiction? Now, Save the Cat, as I've discussed before, is a screenwriting book. It was written specifically for people who are writing movie scripts, hopefully to sell in the Hollywood ecosystem. However, I have found the beats and the storytelling advice in Save the Cat invaluable, so much so that I actually read it before I start any new book project, every single time. So by this point, I've read it more than a dozen times. But with it being specifically written for screenwriters, how do you adapt it to the novel writing process? Well, let's get into that a little bit. So the beats we're talking about are these ones here. They are the 15 moments that Blake Snyder considered must be present in every story. And conveniently, if you look real close, he actually describes on what page each of these beats should fall in a 110-page script, which is the standard length of a script being pitched in Hollywood. And that was actually kind of a big thing for me. Seeing where all of those things were supposed to fall in the overall layout of the story gave me my first clue into adapting the story beats into my writing. Also, if you're a fan of 3-act structure and looking for better ways to implement it, this is fantastic because the beats are specifically designed to move the viewer, or reader in this case, from Act 1 to Act 2 and then Act 2 to Act 3. Like, the acts are a very fundamental part of the beats. So now, I've also discussed in past videos, and I will try to remember to stick a card up here so that you can go watch my video on my process, that you can't be a slave to the Blake Snyder beats, or really any form of outlining, such as the snowflake method. If you just follow it rotely and robotically, you're probably going to end up with a pretty robotic book. However, when I'm outlining, I take the beats and I adapt the page numbers of the script that they're like supposed to fall on, and I adapt those to the number of chapters that I'm planning out for my book. So when I'm starting out, every book of Underrealm, the individual books, of course, like Nightblade, this one novel, not the, volumes that are compilations of 3 books like this one, I start out with the goal of 40 chapters. There's no particular reason for this. There is a particular reason for this. There is actually a particular reason for this that I just remembered. When I was first writing Nightblade, I wrote it as a serialized bit of fiction. It was written in 8 episodes. And those 8 episodes were written with a sort of 5-act structure, similar to how a TV show is normally written, depending on the TV show, obviously. But 8 acts of 5 chapters resulted in a book that was 40 chapters long. There's no better reason for it. That's just how it started, and now 40 chapters is sort of the default. And by the time I'm done with them, the books do vary. Some books have 43 chapters or 44, and some books have 36 chapters. That's what I mean, is like, you can't be robotic about this. I just start out with the general goal of 40 chapters. And so I take the Blake Snyder beats, and I figure out if this is for a 110-page script and I've got 40 chapters, in what chapter should this beat happen? Now, on some of these, it's very easy. The opening image is on page 1 of the script, so it is in chapter 1. And of course, if you read the description of the opening image, it's the first thing that the viewer sees in the film. In my case, it's the first thing that the reader reads about, the opening scene, setting the mood for the entire book. But then it does get a little bit more complicated. Like, the break into Act 2 is supposed to fall on script page 25 out of 110. So what does that mean in terms of where it should fall chapter-wise? Well, I actually have a little formula to tell me that, which will look familiar to you if you remember anything about algebra from high school. And I was one of those guys who was like, I want to be a writer when I grow up. Why would I ever need algebra? Well, there you go, theoretical high school student. There you go. So to explain the formula a little bit, BP stands for beat page. In other words, the page on which that beat is supposed to fall per the Blake Snyder beats. So again, for break into Act 2, that's supposed to fall on BP 25. SP stands for script pages, which in this case is just always 110 because that is how many script pages Blake Snyder thinks are supposed to be in a script. YC stands for your chapters. How many chapters are you planning in your book? And that is the number that you stick in there for YC. And then N is the result that you're looking for. So once you have this formula, you rearrange it to look like this, and bingo! You've got where that beat is supposed to fall in your outline when you're first doing it. I don't know if this makes me the geekiest writer ever. Probably not. Isaac Asimov was a pretty big geek. But anyway, that's how I start out. That's how I apply the beats to my first outline when I'm initially putting it together. Now, but here's the very important thing. This is what I do when I'm first starting out. When I'm first putting the outline together, and I really want to make sure that structure is there. The structure of the story exists and is the foundation upon which I build everything else. But then I build everything else. In other words, you can't just, have this and lay this out and be like, well, this will be a perfect story now. No, then I really start working on the outline and the beats get lengthened or shortened. They don't always end up actually happening in the chapters that I originally assigned them to. Again, this is just to put the foundation there. It is giving you a starting point from which to develop a story that you can then go on to develop and expand with confidence because you know it's built on something strong, on a good structure. So once you go down the list, adapt all of the Blake Snyder beats to the number of chapters that you're planning on having in your book, and then develop it out into a good outline, you should be ready, theoretically, to start your first draft. Good luck! Thank you to Kristen for the question. I hope that the answer was helpful and didn't cause too many people too many high school flashbacks. A quick reminder to other people watching the video that $5 patrons like Kristen are the only ones who are able to ask me questions for me to cover in the Writer Wednesday series of videos, and they also get these videos 2 weeks in advance of everybody else. So if that sounds exciting to you, check out my Patreon right down there. You can also see the last Writer Wednesday video up in that corner up there. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next Wednesday. Bye!